And he asks, were cuneiform texts archived at Thebes for several generations and then discarded, recycled? What are the odds letters from a Thutmosis III archive comparable to Amarna letters will be found? Okay. Very small. And we're probably not going to find them at Thebes. At least not on, say, the eastern bank. Now, Thebes is divided into two banks. You've got eastern Thebes, which includes Karnak and Luxor. And those are the big temples. While there were archives at temples, they did not include cuneiform tablets and were basically had mostly religious documents. Okay? You're more likely to find cuneiform texts at royal scriptoriums. So basically, if you have a royal palace, you might be able to find a scriptorium within that royal palace that might have a few cuneiform texts. It's going to depend, though. It's going to depend upon the archaeological conditions under which that palace was, say, preserved or not. Well, like, for example, there's the royal palace of the Hyksos at Avaris had a large scriptorium with over 300 documents. We know that from the bullae that we found there. There were 2 cuneiform tablets, but unfortunately the groundwater destroyed most of the clay of the tablets. Because here's the thing. Most of these clay tablets were not fired. They were unfired. So they're just dried clay. So under wet conditions, they will degrade. The ones that we have, a lot of the ones that are actually preserved from, say, like the Temple of Shemesh in Mesopotamia, they were preserved because the temple burned down. The temple burned down, fired the clay, and made them hard as rock. So that's why we have a lot of cuneiform tablets from Mesopotamia. Because these temples were burned to the ground. Yeah, it's really ironic that the fire actually preserved the cuneiform tablets. So this is one of the things about cuneiform tablets, which is so awesome, is when you do have a a destruction layer and a fire event, those tablets survive. We even have a fragment of a cuneiform tablet from Jericho that survived because Jericho had been burned in the late Bronze Age. So there's a fragment there that remained. So we're not likely to find that in a Thutmosis III archive because it would have been unlikely that where a palace would have been on the water's edge. Would have been on the water's edge, and the palace would have been made of mostly mud brick with probably some fair amount of groundwater. So it's unlikely that a Thutmosis III archive would have had cuneiform tablets that survived. However, we do know that Thutmosis III was sent cuneiform tablets because there's a document in the Amarna letters that tells us that he was sent cuneiform tablets. He was sent letters. And those letters would have been on cuneiform tablets. So Thutmosis III was sent cuneiform tablets. Would they have survived? Not very likely. The only major palace that we have found on the west side, which is where the royal palaces would have been, has been the one of Amenhotep III. And the preservation of the palace of Amenhotep III isn't good. It's very, very poor. Very little of that palace survives. We have the floor plan, and that's about it. We found no scriptorium for the palace of Amenhotep III. I mean, it's a big palace, a huge palace. I mean, it's really big. But very little of it survived. So, unfortunately, our chances of finding a Thutmosis III archive, very small. Very, very small. Because these palaces are generally not located in super dry places.